So Labour have done a big speech, Keir Starmer's done a big speech saying effectively that a Labour government wouldn't turn on the spending tax if it won the next election. Some people might be looking at the state of their schools or the fact they can't get a GP appointment and thinking, don't our public services need more money?
Well, the Conservatives have broken our economy and they've broken our public services. That's clear to everybody. But the damage they've done in 14 years can't be cleaned up overnight. And Keir Starmer's absolutely right to emphasise that Labour will be responsible with the public finances. So we won't be doing what Liz Truss tried to do, which to borrow money for day-to-day spending. We all saw how that crashed the economy, how it led to rocketing inflation, mortgages, rents. None of that would a Labour government do. So what Keir has outlined is Labour has a plan to grow the economy. And as we grow the economy, more people get better paid jobs and are earning more. That will mean more tax revenue and business tax revenue into the exchequer. At that point, you can start to spend on the public services more generally. But specifically, Keir and Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, have pointed to some areas where there are particular loopholes in tax that we can fix, and then priority areas where that money could be spent. So, for instance, the non-dom tax loophole, which is where non-domiciled residents, people who are billionaires, live in our country but pay less tax than my hairdresser, will start to pay taxes. And from that, we can invest in the NHS and in schools.
We've spoken a lot about the non-dom talks over the last kind of few months or so. Yeah. Does it sound a bit gloomy? You know, are you guys like the Eeyore of politics now? Like no spending, no tax cuts?
No, it sounds realistic. And what this is based on is a plan to grow the economy. Now, if you look over
We've heard that before, though. Everyone says they have a plan to grow the economy.
Well, you can look at the numbers, Sophie, to be fair.
Yeah,
under this Conservative government, the economy has grown 50% less every year than under the last Labour government. That would have given the Exchequer today an extra £150 billion, either for tax cuts or public services spending or a mixture of both. Now, Labour has a plan to grow the economy. It includes changing planning rules so we can speed up planning, one of the biggest constraints on business growth, and supporting small businesses.
I want to talk about migration, because the government has today announced a new 5-point plan to try and reduce net migration levels, so increasing the minimum salary for skilled worker visa, banning care workers from bringing over their families as well. Now, I know you will want to get out your sort of lines that it's all the Conservatives' fault, they can't be trusted, migration levels are high. We'll take that all as read. We know what you're going to say on that. What I'm interested in is what would Labour do? Do you agree with these plans or not?
Well, you can't get away from the fact that this is the latest in a whole string of Conservative Home Secretaries standing up there saying they're going to cut inflation and it goes up.
We've been talking about Liz Truss, we've talked about all these guys before. I just want to talk about Labour. Would you support their plans on net migration?
Well, some of their plans they've taken from us. So this crazy thing that they've had in place where they offer employers a 20% wage discount to employ somebody from abroad to come into their country, perhaps with dependents, have to find somewhere to live, rather than use the money to train up a British person to do the job. That was insane. We've been calling for years for them to scrap that. Finally, they've done that. I think that will help the situation. But underneath that is a bigger problem, which they didn't address today.
So we've got your view on that bit. How about the idea that they want to stop dependents coming over for care workers, for instance? It's a big policy today. Well, what do you think of it?
That links to the point I was about to make, actually. The fact that they're having to bring so many people in from abroad is because they failed to manage the British economy properly. If you were training up British people to do jobs like care workers,
but what do you think about the policy for stopping
there wouldn't be an issue about bringing dependents in, because if you train a British worker to do the job, their dependents already live here. They already have a home here. You don't have to talk about bringing somebody in. Because the Conservatives have failed to manage the economy, they are facing this dilemma of whether to bring dependents in with the foreign worker. If you trained up a British worker to do it, there's no question about the dependents coming in the first place.
Do you support the idea of stopping dependents coming in for care workers?
Well, I support the idea of reducing net migration, and that is one of the areas where, I mean, we haven't seen the detail of what the Conservatives are promising. Are they going to stop it from tomorrow? Are they going to phase it in 6 months' time, in 5 years' time? Until I know that, I can't comment on what they're doing, but I'm making the broader point that we're only in this problem.
Would you do it? Do you like the idea or not?
I like the idea of it. It's when you phase it in, because what you don't want to end up with is care homes with no care workers and a lot of older people no longer being supported. But had they used that money to train up British workers, there wouldn't be an issue of bringing in people from abroad to do the jobs. And that's where they've gone wrong. They've mismanaged the economy, even in that respect.
OK. Margaret Thatcher, what's your view?
I'm not a great fan. My dad was one of the people that lost his job when she was Prime Minister and we had that big Thatcher recession. Keir Starmer...
What was your dad doing then? What was
He was a printer, yeah, a place called Oddham's in Watford, which closed down, as many places did during that period. There was no industrial strategy, just as there doesn't seem to be an industrial strategy today. But the point Keir was making about Margaret Thatcher was that, you know, love her or loathe her, she did make the weather politically, and not all prime ministers do that. It's fair to say, I think Tony Blair did the same. Keir was making the point that the different approach he would have to running the government, a mission-led government, not the chop and change we've seen under the Conservatives, would lead to a more profound change. And we need that today with the cost of living crisis hitting people in our country harder than anything they've experienced in their adult lives.
In the Sunday Telegraph, Keir Starmer said Margaret Thatcher sought to drag Britain out of its stupor by setting loose and natural entrepreneurialism. Your dad wouldn't have agreed with that, would he?
She set out to do that. Whether she achieved it is another question. I think you still can go to communities up and down this country that were hollowed out by Margaret Thatcher's government that still haven't recovered. And we need a proper, functioning, levelling up agenda today, which also Keir was talking about in his speech.